obviously, you know, I'm Sharon, and
I'm Simon. Hello.
We're from the Centre for Comedy Studies Research, and yes, comedy is a serious academic topic, in case you're wondering. Just to follow on from Geoff's point earlier about comedy not necessarily being seen as a serious and genuine pursuit. We're delighted to be launching this today, the 2025 UK Live Comedy Sector Survey Report, which I hope you all have a copy. I think you probably all have. And this report is a collaboration between the Centre for Comedy Studies Research, the Live Comedy Association and the British Comedy Guide. And this is a follow-up survey to this report last year, which we launched this time last year, which was the first UK Live Comedy Sector Survey report. It was the first time that the sector had been surveyed in any shape or form. So this year's survey sort of builds on last year's survey. But before we think about this year's survey, aim to address the gaps that we have in our knowledge and understanding about the economic, the social and the cultural benefits of live comedy sector. And it was designed to promote and support UK live comedy. And I think, I'm not just saying this because I was one of the co-authors of the report, I think it did that. Okay, it did have an impact, and those aims were achieved. And this particularly was evidenced by some of the report authors and some of you in the room being invited to represent the sector and provide evidence at the Department of Culture, Media and Sport evidence session on live comedy back in April of last year. I don't think that would have happened without the work of Geoff, the Live Comedy Association and that report last year. And I say that because the questions they asked us in that session were based on the sections in the report from last year. So it did have an impact. And also, the evidence session and the report again was quoted heavily in a letter that was written to the Minister for Creative Industries, Arts and Tourism from the chair of the DCMS Select Committee, asking for live comedy to be recognised as an important part of the creative industries. And I think these are really significant. So the economics of the live comedy sector theme focuses on the size, the scale of live comedy. It focuses on the numbers of shows and ticket sales, and also turnover, income and expenditure. And the key findings, all of you in this room are probably not surprised at this key finding, but it's there in the data that you can use as evidence. Key finding is the sector is characterised by economic differences and economic inequalities. So just to give you some of the statistics, I'm going to throw out a few numbers now, just to give you a flavour of what's in the written report. So the average number of shows that comedians are performing per week in the 2025 survey is 2.54. And this is a reduction from an average in last year's survey of 3.2 shows a week. So there's a reduction. I don't know if that reflects your experience in the room. When we looked at the average turnover, so not just profit, annual turnover for comedy organisations, this year's survey, the average was just over 527,000, and that was down from last year's figure of 9,000, just over 960,000. Okay, so there's a suggestion that economically things are looking worse this year than they were last year. That might reflect your experience in the sector as well. When we think about the average turnover for individual comedians, and there's some of you in the room, I don't know if this reflects your experience, let's see. The average turnover comedians in this year's survey is just over 21,000. Okay, that's an average. And that's down from an average of just over almost 27,000 last year. So it's gone down from just over 21,000 to just under 27,000 last year. That might reflect your experiences, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah? That's good, yeah. But it's not good. It's good that it reflects the evidence in the survey, but it's not good, the pattern.
We find is the continued dominance of London and the South East in the sector. So we found 25% of single location comedy organisations are based in London, further 11% in the South East, so that's 36% in that area. The least represented areas are Wales, only 4%, the East Midlands with only 4%, and East Anglia with only 4%. Although 22% of comedians report performing in a range of locations, so on circuit or on tours, 19% reported performing in London and 11% in the South East, compared with 12% performing in Yorkshire and Humber and 10% in the North West. So those are the main areas in which comedians are performing. In terms of where comedians are living, there's a slight shift from last year. So was reported contributing to a vibrant cultural offer. 76% suggested that they did that. 69% said that they offered opportunities to new and emerging comedians, so a majority of organisations, and 68% said that they celebrated British comedy and humour. Cross-sector working characterises live comedy through its charity work, and a significant aspect of comedy organisations are involved in charity work. 76% of organisations engage in some form of charity work, and 78% of comedians reported engaging in charity work annually. And similarly, there are community projects, opportunities for volunteering, training and development courses that help operate in the sector. And there's a great percentage this year of comedians reporting that they benefited from comedy workshops and masterclasses in the sector. That's up from 41% to 46% this year. Okay.
Reflective of my experience of live comedy, and the answer to that was, well, it's reflective of those people who filled in the survey. So we can only, Sharon and Simon can only write about what comes through the survey, and the importance that this is I know it's a partnership between the LCA, Brunel and British Comedy Guide. It's an independent report by two very well-esteemed academics, and the importance of that is really, really crucial when we talk to government. It's not just us saying we're really fucking good. There's an independent organisation, the Centre for Comedy Studies Research, who are saying that we're really fucking good, and it needs being looked at into more details. So thank you so much for all your work on it. It's really appreciated. If you get a chance to circulate it online, that's great. We have quite a lot of copies of this. If you want to take more than one, you'd be very welcome. Otherwise, I'll have to take them home and put them in my loft.
Is from you to be acknowledged and recognised. I understand and I welcome from equity. You've done your own codes of conduct, but I think there's more that we could do to work together. I think from government, what we need is something that will strengthen those already existing legislations. It's not enough to have a tribunal threat at the end, because that's still an adversarial process for a victim to go through. When a victim gets to tribunal, it's still like a court process. They're still going to be cross-examined, they still need a lawyer, they're still going to have to go through the indignities and the emotional burden of trying to prove what went wrong for them. What we're trying to put in place is something at the start where a victim is less likely to experience that sexual harassment. So I think that's where the lobbying needs to be put in place. So if you've not, and we also, because I was speaking to Simon earlier, sorry to bring you into this, Simon, I think we also need to look at a world in which we're not asking, because I think it's prohibitive, the pricing. I think we need to look at a world in where this is free for promoters. I think there is a way of doing this where if we could get a grant or we could get some kind of funding, that we could make this less expensive for promoters to join. It'd be interesting for us to find out, we've got 40, that's quite a lot. What is stopping other promoters from coming on board? We had some really early adopters, we had Manfords and Frog and Bucket, we had some big people, but what is stopping some of those bigger clubs from joining up? And if it is cost, how can we reduce that cost and get them on board? Is that enough? Do you feel told off? This is in no way
thing to archive, because a cartoon has material existence, at least it certainly did in the 70s. It's a drawing or a painting on paper, and you can collect that, you can pop that right in the archive, right? But stand-up comedy, by definition, you can't put the thing itself into the archive, Because it's like this that's happening now. It's happening now, and when I stop talking, when that alarm goes off, it won't be happening anymore. So even if you did a gig in our stacks where the material is stored, it's still not in the archive. As soon as that gig finishes, it's gone. So what do you put in there? Well, one of the items we've got in there is a leatherised tangerine. So what's that got to do with stand-up? Well, it was donated by Josie Long, and it was given out in one of her early shows. I think it was Trying is Good, where she would give out tangerines to audience members who she thought were trying really hard as rewards. So she threw it out to somebody, and that person kept it, and it kind of dried out, and so it's going to live forever now. And then that person, I think, gave it to a friend, and then later when Josie was doing a show about museums and archives, she asked people to send her archive items, and somebody sent it in a little box with a post-it note explaining what it is. You might say, well, that's trivial, it's irrelevant. Why is food stuff connected with stand-up? I think that tells you an awful lot about the nature of stand-up and what it means to audiences and the exchange that happened between performer and audience in stand-up.
Legitimate art forms might be theatre, might be dance, might be live music, might be film. They're legitimate things. And what we're trying to do collectively, I guess, is shift the thinking from about live comedy being an illegitimate art form to being legitimate. That doesn't mean that it needs to be boring or shit or whatever, but it's about that transfer from one side to the other. And I think the work that you're doing, Ollie, with the archive stuff, the stuff that the Centre for Comedy Studies Research and various other people are doing, is about making that shift. I will just give a plug that the Leicester Comedy Festival archive is very similar to Ollie's, and is based at Democratic University in Leicester. And if you're interested, there is an exhibition at the Big Difference happening throughout the Comedy Festival of archive stuff from Leicester Comedy Festival, / all the shit that I collected for 30 years. But it is publicly available as well. And there's a few of us who've been working together to try and get a national archive together of live comedy. But that in itself will help us to be more recognised and dare I say again, more legitimate.
To make sure that you suffer for meaning. And I would say a lot of the people here find meaning in the work they do for around the comedy community, especially those people that make the community. And you know, I go that for say that as well for things that seem quite dry to people on the outside, like Oliver's work. You know, like the work online Steve and Mark do. That feels quite dry, but actually there's a lot of meaning to that for them, because that's how they access the world, and that's what they needed. That's the need they saw in the world. And that is a huge thing in terms of, so I would say, if you're thinking of the start of the comedy community, what has meaning for you? And what are you most sensitive to in the world, in terms of, or in the comedy world, of like what is needed right now? Because right now, the thing about Angel is that most people see it as an institution. I see it as an open mic geek that got out of hand. I genuinely see it like that. And I can't see myself in the higher status as other people might see it, which also creates a weird power thing, because people think I'm more significant than I think I am, and and then people come up and I end up getting confused. So put on a thing, and that goes for Geoff today, and I just want to give Geoff a round of applause. Put on a thing. And anyone here that's created a community has put on a thing, has put, you know, kind of like made themselves open to messing up and actually put on a thing. And it's hard to put on a thing because you have an idea and then suddenly it's 10 times more complicated than you think it's going to be. You've got to get projectors and shit like that nobody uses. Second thing, asking. Like Geoff at the beginning was asking about, you know, and also you were asking about how Nina was asking about, you know, engaging with the thing. And asking is so important. Like when I started Angel Comedy in the old Meccano room, these were great shows, really busy shows with these amazing acts I was emceeing, and like nobody would donate anything in the end. So it's just like they're amazing, and then the split that would go towards the acts would always be like £5. I'm so sorry, that's a full room, I don't know even know. And what changed is people think a bucket speech is actually a cynical thing. What a bucket speech at core should be is telling the people in the room that enjoyed and loved the thing why it's valuable for them to give to that thing. That's all. It's not about you getting money, it's about showing people the value you have. And that is also what community is about. So actually valuing what you do you know, which is hard when you don't often have spaces to come to, which is another reason why I applaud Geoff and anyone here that's created space. It's hard to create space. You have to pay fees that go up by 20%, like randomly because Westminster Council decides it does, or other things happen. And that's another thing about Angel, is the reason why we took over a venue, even though it looked like it wouldn't be able to make a huge amount of money in terms of beer, is it's a space. It's a community space. People come in, you can use it for free. The amount of people that have got keys to the place that come in and use it direct. And you know, because comedy, you don't make much money in comedy unless you're at the very top. And actually, I always say that making it in comedy is surviving. That's it. If you survive year on year on year, that is making it. And engaging with the community with that idea in mind is hugely important because, yeah, sorry, I've got time.